Whether these new cars really waltz or not, these experts can make you think they do.
Finally, head west. Look at them roll. Safe, sure, under control.
All these new Chevrolet trucks for 64 are raring to go to work for you.
The automotive industry in the 1960s was pretty experimental, with lots of design errors, blunders, and shortcomings that brought major scrutiny and defined an entire generation of cars. Let's have a look at some of the worst cars from the 1960s that nobody wants back. But hit that subscribe button and let's begin.
See the 66 Marlin at your friendly Giant Killer. Your American.
We'll kick things off with the AMC Rambler Marlin. The American Motor Corporation introduced the Rambler Marlin in the 1960s. It was an attempt to create a family-friendly vehicle with the exquisite characteristics of a coupe. However, the Rambler didn't stick its landing, as its mellow design polarized fans. The fishback design, sidelines, and curved rear window made the Rambler unique, but the duality of its appeal made it difficult to sell. The Rambler did catch attention for its impressive optional V8 engine, the handling features that greatly improved its performance, but it still fell short in the sea of exceptional vehicles that drowned the market. It failed to compete in power and aesthetics, which were major criteria for the time. Now let's look at one of the most oddly unsafe cars of the 1960s.
And the brightest new champion of the road, Corvair by Chevrolet.
The Chevrolet Corvair. In the late 50s and early 60s, Chevrolet took a chance on the compact and oddly symmetrical Chevrolet Corvair. With its slick structure, it was well accepted by car enthusiasts who had yearned for something new and fresh. But as time passed on, their excitement quickly turned to criticism. Some of the reasons for the backlash from customers were poor handling features, rear engine layout, and uneven weight distribution. Some reported having serious challenges with the handling that posed safety risks during turns or high-speed driving. Handling concerns escalated as critics emphasized that the Corvair was only safe when it was parked, derived from the phrase unsafe at any speed. The criticism by the activist Ralph Nader on the safety and handling on the Corvair had aroused strong emotions in the public, and negative publicity didn't do the brand any good. Chevrolet had tried to salvage the situation by introducing modified versions and updates, but first impressions matter, and Chevy had to halt production of the Corvair in 1969 due to very low sales. The Corvair remains an obscure past in the history of automotive evolution. Next up is the Ford Edsel. This luxury vehicle was mass-produced by the Ford Motor Company from 1958 to 1960 and quickly made an impression in the market, just not the kind of impression that manufacturers had hoped for. The vehicle was designed as a luxury car that was a hybrid of Ford and Mercury, widely advertised not only as a car, but as a symbol of status and sophistication. The marketing strategies were pretty much ambitious, without any attention to factors that posed a problem. The styling and structure of the car were way above its years, and it stood out as unconventional and distinctive. It featured grills and a conspicuous tail fin that consumers thought to be over the top. The lack of connection with consumers was largely due to poor market research and an assumption of customer needs, resulting in complete failure and minimal sales. To make matters even worse, the Ford Edsel was launched in a period of economic instability and massive competition by rival brands. The final nail in the coffin was the cost of its purchase, which was deemed to be too expensive for a car of that quality. Hundreds of millions of dollars went into advertising and branding the Ford Edsel as the car of the future, but it appeared that people were better off living in the present. As investments were unable to yield returns, Ford had to halt production of the Edsel, and many would say that it just didn't fit into the needs of the era, and that manufacturers should have done a bit more customer research before trying to chug an expensive awkwardness down their throats. Some cars should have never been made, from overpriced disasters to design failures, and those that were just poor in performance. Stick with us as we show you more of the worst cars in history that nobody wants back.
France to make driving fun again. Balloons, please. Now, there's lots to talk about.
The Renault Dauphine was truly a car for the 1960s, as its aesthetics easily blended in with the trend and needs of consumers at the time, or so they thought. After it launched in France in the late 50s, it became popular in the United States in the early 60s, and fans were blown away with its sizzling, classic yet sporty look. However, the model had a few structural design problems that complicated things. The engine was placed at the rear, and this was already a recipe for disaster without even considering the cheap and unappealing plastic parts. It had extremely low height, which was so short it made people stoop over just to get into the car. And the popularity was largely polarized, as many complained about the ease of rust, especially in humid environments, as the body panels and undercarriage of the vehicle were not well protected against rusting. The rear engine layout and swing axle rear suspension made handling a real challenge, making the car difficult to control. Because of the complexities of the rear-mounted engine, the car also suffered from overheating, especially in warm weather or when used for long drives. With all of these problems, the car could neither make up for them in speed nor power. It was slow and short distances felt really long. Amidst all the problems, production of the vehicle was discontinued in 1967.
Meet Aztek with new VersaTrack all-wheel drive. Meet Sarah and Jake.
He's my snowman!
Next up is one of the most hated Pontiac models in history, the Pontiac Aztek. The Aztek launched in 2001 as a hybrid of a minivan and an SUV. However, its disproportionate structure, plastic exterior, and poor balance did not resonate with buyers. The interior was a modest attempt at a futuristic car with unconventional design, but the performance left consumers disappointed because it didn't live up to the driving experience that was expected of a car of its status and cost. The performance could be blamed on its general structure, which made an impact on its dynamism. The Aztek was largely unable to fulfill the needs of consumers at a time when competition was high, and for every car model, there was another one that rivaled it. As one would expect, sales were extremely low, and despite adverts to boost the reputation, it just wasn't a great design, and buyers could not be swayed. The Aztek became one of Pontiac's biggest failures.
By looking at just one car, the Triumph Stag.
Next up, a car that starred in a popular movie, but also brought about mixed emotions. In 1970, the Mercedes-Benz SL class was making major waves, so the Triumph Motor Company tried to manufacture a luxury sports model that could compete with the Benz. The Triumph Stag would be their solution. While the Stag had some interesting aesthetics, it also had its downsides. It was quite reputable for its mechanical unreliability, which often led to overheating. The vehicle even made it in Times magazine as one of the worst 50 cars ever made. Despite the bad publicity and backlash from disappointed fans, many others expressed their undying love for the controversial classic sports car. The Stag was so popular that in 1971, it was featured in the James Bond movie Diamonds Are Forever. This level of publicity drew a lot of attention to the Stag, but its unreliability remained a dampening factor that greatly affected its sales. In 1977, the brand ceased production, putting an ending to the beautiful disappointment.
The whole range of 10 cars was to be launched to the public in April.
This next vehicle was named the worst car with the highest success in sales, none other than the Morris Marina. Launched in 1971 by British Leyland, the Marina was designed as a modest, simple car and didn't require a lot of fancy mechanics or super features. It was built to be the right car at the right time for those who needed a way to get around. It's needless to say the Marina sold over 1 million units. It was initially designed to rival the Ford Cortina and the Escort. However, it came up short, based on outdated technology and parts like the minor suspension parts, which were recycled in the Marina. The build quality was considerably poor, and many had complained of electrical failure, mechanical unreliability, and rust issues. The handling was particularly criticized, and the suspensions provided the worst experience possible. Despite its flaws, the Morris Marina was sold at a ridiculously low price, and as you could imagine, it gave more people the opportunity to own a car, so it sold a lot. The Marina had failed to create a positive impact and instead left many with complaints of its mediocre performance. Today, the Marina is a symbol of decline in the British automobile industry and is a reference to a time when British manufacturers struggled to compete with major automotive makers in Europe and the US.
This was actually a 3-year restoration, 8 months to a year to paint it.
The Sunbeam Alpine is another car that's better left in the past. The Alpine was manufactured in several series, so it's important to make the distinction between each model as they all differed in their reputation. This focus is on the Sunbeam that was introduced in 1959, lasting until 1968. The compact car was built to compete with other smaller cars of its era, like the Triumph TR. The Alpine hit the peak of its popularity when it was featured in the James Bond movie Dr. No, and was reasonably attractive with a 4-cylinder engine that provided decent performance at a relatively affordable price. It seemed like you got your money's worth, but it wasn't the case. The Alpine would be criticized for several reasons. Like many in its league, the metal parts of the vehicle were prone to heavy rust, which relatively reduced its durability. The build was also very inconsistent, and many models suffered mechanical issues. While the Sunbeam was averagely sporty, it fell short of its competitors such as the Triumph TR4, which overshadowed the Alpine. The vehicle was unable to maintain a solid position in the market in terms of sales, and even though it faced criticism, it left a long-lasting impact in history as one of the British-made cars to have gained popularity in the US and other parts of the world. The Ford Pinto was introduced in the early 70s and won the hearts of car lovers in an instant with its simplicity and affordability. It was exactly what the era needed in a tough economy. Performance-wise, the Pinto was no sports car, but it served its purpose as a great family-friendly ride. Everything seemed to be fine until the crashes began. The design of the Pinto included a critical error that altered the safety of the vehicle and led to recalls and lawsuits. The major problem with the Pinto was the positioning of its fuel tank. Unlike other vehicles, the Pinto had its fuel tank lodged near the rear axle, which made rear-end collisions fatal, as the fuel tank could easily rupture under a little bit of collision and start a fire, consuming everything in sight. The rear tank also had occasional leaks, which was just as fatal without collisions. It became tragically evident that the Pinto was extremely unsafe as the number of catastrophic incidents increased. Ford, instead of making major changes to the design of the Pinto, decided it was more economical to settle lawsuits on accidents than to recall the massively selling Pinto model and make the necessary changes. This decision almost destroyed the reputation of the company, as public awareness led to declining in sales, more lawsuits, and a bad public reputation. Today, the Pinto is remembered as a dark time in automobile design and an example of what happens when an automobile company places profit over the safety of its consumers.
See? Bags of room. Polishes itself. Magic mirror, they call it.
The Vauxhall Viva was manufactured and launched in 1963 by Vauxhall Motors, a UK company. The Viva model was released in 3 different generations. Known for being an overall practical, pocket-friendly family ride, the Viva Fever started with the first generation. The HA was designed to compete with other cars like the Morris Marina and Ford Anglia, but it was criticized for its very plain and unappealing look. The HB was introduced with a more streamlined design, better features, and improved performance in terms of its engine size and capacity. While the market reacted positively to the HB, the automotive market was quickly evolving and there was a need to compete with a fast-developing market. Therefore, the HC was introduced in 1970 as a 3rd generation and the longest-standing variant of the car. To ensure versatility and appeal to a broader customer base, the HC came with 3 engine options. A variety of body styles included saloons, coupes, and more, and the Viva HC appealed to a lot more customer demographics than its predecessors, as well as other brands. However, in 1979, Vauxhall decided to halt productions on the Viva entirely. The Viva could not compete with the safety and emission regulations that were a lot more strict, And another significant problem was the rapidly changing consumer preference, which seemed to be shifting every minute. Automobile companies struggled to find that sweet spot between what was appealing and how competitive the innovation was against other brands. To remain relevant, the GM brand had to streamline newer car models, and the Astra was introduced as a replacement for the Viva. The replacement provided better technology, front-wheel drive, and better alignment with the ongoing market trends.
Wagen dringt in einen Wald ein, der für jeden Autofahrer ausgesprochen unangenehm ist.
Next up is the 1964 Fiat 850, a vehicle known for its small size. The Fiat's an Italian brand revered for its exceptional features. It has a rear engine, a rear-wheel drive, and it certainly makes it stand out in many ways besides being ridiculously small. The 850 evolved from the 600, offering a bit more power and space, along with features, and came in various forms like the Roadster Coupe sedan and station wagon. Built as a pocket-friendly choice, it's powered by a small engine delivering a miserly 52 horsepower. It had decent handling and performance for its size and soon became popular with urban drivers, taxis, and those who were looking for a cheap car to drive. While this beloved vehicle attracted buyers at its peak, its popularity began to decline in the 70s, owing to a few reasons. Consumer preference was a major reason for decline, and the shift from simple and affordable to advanced features and safety standards took it by surprise, and it struggled to stay afloat for a few more years until being drowned by the competition. Fiat introduced newer models to take place of the 850 like the 127, but the 850 will always remain a cherished classic. It just didn't have the space, aesthetics, or even performance.
Unpromising beginnings, but the little car duly emerged from the factory to greet an unsuspecting.
Next up is the 1963 Hillman Imp, a vehicle that could have been a success, but turned out to be a massive failure and even cost the government a significant amount of money. To make matters worse, the vehicle contributed to giving the British car manufacturing companies a bad reputation. The Imp was designed as a rival to the Ford Anglia, but one big design mistake was putting the engine at the rear. The aim was to secure a bigger cabin space, which seemed to be okay at first, but the weight of the engine in the back caused an oversteer, and after adjustments were made to the suspension, the price of the car went up, and fans became outraged at the new cost. A new problem was close by, one that caused interference of the government. The government decided that the Imp should be manufactured at a newly set up factory in Linwood, Scotland, to stimulate economic growth and provide jobs, but the early models were extremely poor because of the inexperience of the workforce. The new models would overheat, develop electrical problems, and other mechanical issues, and things took a turn for the worst with incessant labor strikes that contributed to major financial loss for the government and damage to the reputation of the brand. The manufacturers were acquired by Chrysler Europe, who tried to salvage the reputation of the car in hopes of maintaining market share, but due to reliability issues, it seemed like the best decision was discontinuing production while focusing on more profitable models. The Imp was discontinued in 1976 and is remembered today as a chaotic investment that should have never happened in the first place. Finally, we have the Simca 1000, also referred to as the Mile. The French automaker launched the petite vehicle in 1961, equipped with a rear engine and rear-wheel drive. The car garnered popularity and praise due to its affordability and ease of use. Its main market was Europe, especially in countries like Spain, Italy, and France. The glory days would soon fade as the vehicle was left behind by more modern technology. It was mostly criticized for its instability and poor handling, which was partly due to the rear engine layout. The setup made the car prone to oversteering, and other quality concerns like heavy rust dampened the confidence of customers in the model. As time went on, consumer preferences prompted a shift from the average performing, simple car to other more promising prospects, and the 1000 could no longer compete. Furthermore, the acquisition of Chrysler Europe, Simca's parent company, by another manufacturer was the final nail in the coffin. The new owners had to streamline the product range, leaving out the non-performing models like the Simca. Which of these vehicles do you think deserves another shot at the market in this era? Let me know in the comments below, And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another great memory in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.